Okay, hello everybody. Hopefully everything's working out and you can hear me just fine. If you can't, let me know in the chat down below. But let's go right on ahead. We'll get started today. I want to talk about healthy eating because it was one of the biggest, hardest questions. I couldn't answer this question within the time that we had very well when we were doing the call last week. So I wanted to make sure that I was able to get to it today. So I'm going to tell you specifically what my definition is for healthy eating, and specifically what I mean when I say eat healthy, make healthier choices, that sort of thing. To me, and this is not an official definition, this is just a personal definition. Healthy eating is a set of consistent weekly and daily habits of varied food intake that result in meeting sufficient intake of your macro and micronutrients, which results in longevity and sustained vigor. So that is a bit of a broad and kind of convoluted definition. So what I mean by that is they are choices that you make on a regular basis that are more likely to make you live longer, feel better, and have more energy as you age. And if you pay attention, it's very much something that's determined by your age and your lifestyle, and this varies. That definition allows you to basically define overeating a little bit as still healthy eating because it's within your goals. It allows undereating to be also healthy as long as it's within your goals. But it does also basically not so clearly, but clearly state that if you overeat too much or on a consistent basis, this is probably going to be unhealthy. That's pretty much what I mean when I say healthy eating. Before I get into a bit more of the nitty gritty on what you should really put in your mouth, I want to talk about some myths because I got to dispel them before I can throw at you what's a good diet or a good idea of a diet that you need to think of when you're going grocery shopping. So first of all, the biggest myth, and this is one that we heard last week, which is that carbs are bad. This is just flat out just not true. Some carbs are probably less healthy for you than others, and we can get to that in a little bit. But overall, carbs are your energy, they're your fuel source. So you should be intaking as much carbs as you can within the realm of what's healthy for you and what your personal goals are. The next one is going to be the idea that high fat or low fat is good or bad, respectively. This is the keto argument. And while I have said before, and I'll say it again, keto does work, I want you to know that it is not something that you can sustain on a long-term basis. So I don't suggest doing it for more than 6 weeks. So the idea that fat is something that you need to maximize is a bit dangerous. And anybody who thinks about this for like more than 20 or 30 minutes is really going to recognize, yeah, this is actually probably a bad idea. If you're increasing your intake of fat, your body is going to be unable to process everything in the most optimal way. It's going to either clog your arteries or it's going to harm your organs. It is not necessarily a good idea to increase your intake of fat to a maximum degree without taking some caution there. Next up, and I'll tell you how much fat you should have in your diet on a varied place. But next up is the idea that, and this one has been tossed down my throat my whole life, but the idea that natural ingredients are somehow better than genetically modified or manufactured ingredients. This is a fallacy. This is flat out just wrong in general. It doesn't make any logical sense. There are plenty of natural and organic substances that are totally poisonous to you. So to think that this is factual is just flat out wrong. But then to sit on a varied level and to just assume on the side that natural ingredients are going to be healthier is also a bit of a dangerous assumption. A good example of this is peanut butter. Natural peanut butter actually contains a carcinogen. And so when you go to the store and you buy into the idea that natural equals better, and then you buy natural peanut butter, actually you're going to ingest something that either had a carcinogen removed from it or literally still contains a carcinogen that is a natural result of crunching peanuts. That's just what it is. The manufactured or processed peanut butter actually has that removed. So it's artificial, yes, but it's actually safer for you to eat. And this extends well beyond the realm of just natural one food and artificial others. The idea of genetically modified versus organic food is totally a sales ploy. Especially if you're buying like supplements or anything, or even produce, which it almost makes no sense. Organic just means living organism. It doesn't really mean anything in the real sense. But when you're talking about food in general, and I think you all understand what I mean when I say organic. Organic food actually is more likely to use more pesticides in the processing of the food. It's more likely to have fewer nutrients in it, so fewer micronutrients that will actually allow you to have a wider varied diet. And it is actually more likely to be not just more expensive, but actually more harmful to the environment to produce, because local, and this is a little harder to argue, but locally sourced food actually makes more greenhouse gases than far sourced food, and that actually has to do with the efficiency of the engines of trucks versus the efficiency of the engines of boats. Boats are far more efficient, and so actually getting some food that's from like across the world is actually going to be a bit better for you in that respect. As far as genetically modified food, there is no evidence that it is unsafe for you. In fact, we were able to reach the level of population that we have globally because we started using genetically modified wheat, and it has not been shown to decrease lifespan. In fact, it's been shown to do the opposite. It requires less pesticide because it actually has the genes that fight the pests, and so you don't have to spray the fields as much. And it is literally just as good, if not better, than the organic model. So it is okay to eat food that is GMO, and it is definitely okay to eat food that is not organic. It's totally fine, totally safe, and just take the word organic with a grain of salt. It is a sales ploy. The next and last myth is the idea of processed food being cancerous. I mentioned this with the artificial peanut butter versus the natural peanut butter, but it's not just that. There is a likelihood that certain types of foods are more carcinogenic, but there are carcinogens found in berries, fruits. There's carcinogens in just about all the food that you eat in general, to some degree. But when we're talking specifically about processed food, and I think we all understand what I mean when I say processed, but I don't understand what I mean when I say processed. So I should define it. Processed food to me means it's been somewhat prepared for you. So that could be anything that's happened in a restaurant, so whatever you get in a restaurant, and then all the way over to anything that you pick up at the grocery store. There's a wide variety, a wide spectrum of what processed food is. And so if there's a wide spectrum of what it is, that means there's a wide spectrum of the results or the harmful effects or the positive effects that it could have on your body. And so in general, when I refer to processed food as being bad for you, or if somebody does, they might be talking about food that has a long shelf life. And so these could be something like your ramen, your canned food, your sodas. These have long shelf lives, and food with a long shelf life usually contains preservatives. So when you are making something like a can of soup or something like that, you have to put preservatives into the can to make sure that the can itself can contain the food and make sure that the food doesn't rot inside the can. Well, here's the thing. When you do that, there's a possibility, not a guarantee, but a possibility that some of that material, some of that preservative could get into the food. And so if you are, going to get food that has a long shelf life, just know that it may contain trace amounts of a carcinogen. So that's your soda, that's your ramen, that's your canned food, that's your sauces, that's just about anything that has a shelf life greater than 1 to 4 years. That's a very long shelf life. does not mean that you're going to absolutely 100% get cancer if you eat a ho-ho. It's not how it works. But what will happen is the more exposure you get to food that has these very, very long shelf lives, the more exposure you get to the possibility of having those trace amounts enter your bloodstream. And so those trace amounts of those possibly carcinogenic substances, which are systematically being removed as they're found, but over time, and if you look at the history of it, you'll see that. But they're systematically being removed as they're found. But the more exposure that you have to them, the more likely they are to cause cancer in your body. That's it. That's all it is. Okay, so that's all the myths that I wanted to dispel when it comes to healthy eating, because I keep hearing them over and over again. And so I'm probably going to have to keep saying them over and over again. But finally, let's talk about basically a healthy diet in general. And I'm not going to make specific food suggestions, but I'm going to basically tell you what you should be thinking when you're going to the grocery store or when you're buying food or anything like that. I can show you where to go to find out where to make the calculations that would be necessary for this sort of thing. When this video is done, I'm going to actually put links to all of it in the description. So you'll have all of that there. But when it comes to your food intake, we're going to start with fats. Your fats are basically, I like to call them the oil of your machine. So you need them. They're structural for your cells. They actually help insulate your body in the cold. They provide energy when you are not fed. Fat is very important in your body, but it also allows you to process your vitamins. So that means that we need to intake some of it in order to actually be healthy, right? So how much fat should you get? Well, here's the thing. Americans tend to have too much fat in their diet, and people who are, on the keto side really have a lot in their diet. But the amount that's recommended is no more than 30% of your diet, and 10%, no more than 10% of that should come from animal fats. So that means like your butter, your milks, anything that, lard, anything like that, that actually needs to be reduced in your diet. And the average American has about 15% instead of that 10%. So that may be contributing to a part of the obesity problem in the country, but I'm not really sure about that. Overall, though, reduce the amount of fat in your diet. A lot of people come to me and they say, well, I eat really healthy. And then they're telling me they're eating avocados, they're eating beans, they're eating hummus, they're eating olive oil. Well, guess what? All of that is high in fat, incredibly high in fat. Avocados are very fatty. Beans are very fatty. Hummus is literally olive oil and beans. And olive oil is literally just an unsaturated fat. It's just a plant fat. So just keep in mind that when you're adding, dressings to your salads, when you're adding butter or cheese to things, you're adding fat. And so you want to keep track of how much fat is in your system. Again, I will give you a link that will give you the materials you need to make calculations and to understand what you need to do when it comes to the putting the amount of fat that you want in your diet into your diet. Next up, how much protein you should need is really dependent on how active you are. Now, the general idea is if you're not active at all, you want about 0.5 grams, and then you're going to take that, so 0.5, and you're going to multiply that by your current weight in pounds. So that's how much if you're not active. If you are active, if you're lifting, which all of you are, you want to increase that to almost about 1 gram and multiply that by your body weight. So you take 1 gram or 0.8, which is the upper limit of the recommended, but I'm saying 1 gram for simplicity. Just multiply that by your body weight. So however many pounds you are, just multiply that by 1. That's how much protein you want to get in grams. The more active you are, the more protein you need. And we have a pretty aggressive set of programs for most of you. The idea is let's get as much lean body mass on you as possible so that you reach your goals a little bit faster, and so that you're a little bit more hungry actually as you move through, and so then you'll satiate it with healthy choices. That's the general philosophy, at least behind my programming, and I'm sure a little bit behind Nash's and Mark's as well. But lastly are the carbohydrates. So when it comes to your carbohydrates, there's kind of a spectrum. There's not a hierarchy of what's good and what's bad, but there's a spectrum of what amount you need. Carbs range from your carrots and your broccoli all the way down to white bread. Like that is a massive spectrum of what makes up carbs. So when people say carbs are bad, they really don't know what they're talking about, because carrots are carbs and so is bread. It really varies massively. Somewhere in here, you got your whole grains and your popcorn and that sort of thing. Somewhere down here, you have, your pastas and that sort of thing. And somewhere in the middle-ish, you have like your potatoes and that sort of thing. This is a wide spectrum. And guess what? This end is going to have more micronutrients, and this end is going to have more carbs in general. So this one's going to be nutrient deficient. This one's going to be nutrient rich. This one's going to be energy efficient, and this is going to be energy deficient. So this one's actually going to be harder to digest. So your broccoli, your raw carrots, that sort of thing, hard to digest. Your noodles, your ramen, your white bread, it's so easy to digest that it just flies through you, right? So what do you want to eat? You want to eat a variety of it. It's okay to have white bread. It's okay to hate like wheat and then only eat white as long as you're eating some vegetables. So just get as much as you can along the spectrum. Now, overall, what you need to be thinking when you're going grocery shopping and that sort of thing is, I'm an omnivore. I can eat whatever. It's just I need to make a varied set of choices that are going to increase my longevity, that are going to increase my likelihood of living a good long life or a good healthy life, or that are going to get me closer to my current goals. So if that means increasing your protein, increase your protein. If that means decreasing your fat, decrease your fat. If that means increasing your carbs, increase your carbs. Overall, as long as you're getting within that, maybe 20 to 30% fat range, and you're getting enough protein, you can fill it up with whatever, as long as it fits your goals, and as long as you're not, feeling sick, feeling unhappy, or whatever. Some people avoid sugar because it makes them feel sick. I don't like cookies because they don't really feel good when I eat them, but I do enjoy eating them. So it's okay. You can have the cookie, kind of a thing. All right. So we're going to end the stream right there. We're going to jump right into the video. The Zoom call. I'm going to also send around, when we enter the Zoom call, I'm going to send around the link to the Zoom call so that everybody can join, because I know some people weren't able to join the video, but are going to be able to join the Zoom call. So I'm looking forward to seeing you all in there, and just click the link that's in the description. We are going right over there.